So thank you for allowing me to come out and visit. August 13th, the school district has a very important question that's going to go to our community, and so I just want to have an opportunity to be able to discuss that a little further. I will promise to use our time efficiently and get through this, and then at the end, if there's any questions, by all means, if you have questions as we go, we can stop and address those as we go too. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Bullard. I just finished my first year as the school superintendent here in Paynesville. And a little known fact that some know, I know in this room, some don't, but I actually attended kindergarten through 3rd grade in Paynesville. My parents lived in the community from 1978 to 1984, and then moved to Alexandria. So it's kind of a coming back sort of a deal. So I do want to start, and I think it's important for people that are gathering information about the August 13th referendum to really understand kind of what the vision and direction of Paynesville area schools is. I believe it probably is different than maybe your experience in school. I can tell you with certainty it was different than my experience in school. Then we'll talk about the facility project, talk about next steps, which is really easy, just a reminder to get to the polls on August 13th. And then at the end there'll be questions. But if something I say strikes you and you have a question, we can certainly address it right away as well. So where's Paynesville area schools going? This is a critically important question. This was my school experience in Alexandria, Minnesota. I think Alexandria has a lot of the same qualities as Paynesville does. I was a fairly typical student. Depending on who you talk to on which day, they either liked me or they didn't. All students in my graduating class, we all took the same core classes. It was the same requirements for all. If we did well in those core classes, we could get a recommendation from those teachers. And then as a senior, you could actually take some college classes. Unfortunately, I didn't fit into that class or that group, so I finished my high school career without a single college experience. But the message was sent very clearly from my high school experience, from my parents. When I finished high school, I had one option, and that was you're moving out and you're going to be on a college campus. There was no debate. I knew very clearly that that was my next step. Today, I think things are changing. And this isn't unique to Paynesville. This is schools all across Minnesota, all across the nation. For the last 20 plus years, the only way we have viewed success is by looking at how many kids we can get to a college campus. That was the single measure that we were judging whether we were successful or not. So what do we want school to look like in Paynesville tomorrow and into the future? First of all, we're committed to rigor. We're committed to a rigorous literacy foundation, reading, math, writing, and we're talking about as young as 3- and 4-year-olds all the way up to seniors. Learning opportunities, we have to tap into individual student interests and passions. The idea that the system I went through and graduated from, where it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, what you're interested in, you're still taking the same core classes, that model needs to shift. It needs to change. We need to start talking about critical thinking and problem-solving skills. How do we develop those soft skills? Those in the room that are employers. When you're looking for a new employee, did you want someone who was a content expert? Or do you want somebody who had the soft skills and you could teach them exactly the content that you wanted to teach them? And that's really what employers are looking for today. It's not necessarily somebody who's a content expert, but it's somebody that's got all the intangibles, all the soft skills that they can come into my organization and I can mold them into exactly what we're looking for. And finally, we need to kind of take this student choice and offerings and flip it on its head. For so many years now, we've been telling elementary school, middle school children that we will tell you what classes you need to take in school. And those are the kids that have interests in everything. Those are the ones that just have a natural curiosity. We need to tap into that natural curiosity and give them choices. Let them explore different areas of school, different areas of work, and let them really determine what is it I have a natural curiosity and interest in. And that's very different than what we're doing right now. So that's where Paynesville's moving. This year, you may, if you have connections to the high school in any way, the high school is moving to a block schedule. We have over 35 new middle school electives that kids are choosing from, and we have over 20 new high school electives. So this process is already underway, but this needs to be tomorrow's experience. The summary for this slide is, what is school about? Students. And we need to get back to that core. School needs to be about students. So, the other thing the high school is working on diligently is what we're calling career pathways. You probably, if you have neighbors or family relatives that are in other schools in the state, other high schools are working on this as well. But our goal is to develop 3, 4, or 5 different career pathways that as freshmen, students could explore pathways and ultimately graduate with an emphasis in a certain pathway. I put up a sample health career pathway because this is one that we actually will have in place this school year. So you could take, a student would take a core health class in 9th or 10th grade. That class would have first aid CPR certification tied to it. From there, that could flow into a Principles of Biomedical Science or our biology course that we partner with St. Cloud State with, that potentially a student could earn college credit if they so chose. After taking biology, that entry-level course, they move on to an anatomy course. That's human body systems. That again is partnered with St. Cloud State. If they want, they could pursue the college credit tied to it. We just completed our first cohort of certified nursing assistant students this spring. There were 18 students that graduated with their certification. 6 of them were from Paynesville, and I'm happy to report, the last I heard, as of about 2 weeks ago, 5 of the 6 are actually working in a facility utilizing their certification today. So that's an offering, and now this next year we will have an online course that would be a medical terminology course that they could actually earn college credit. So this would be a sample career pathway for that kid who thinks, maybe I want to go into nursing, maybe I want to go to med school, maybe I want to do something in the medical field. This would be a group of courses that over their high school career would give them some exposure to it. Okay? So the hallmarks of these pathways, this is just one. We also need to look at a manufacturing and engineering pathway. We need to look at a humanities pathway. There's an assortment of different pathways that our high school right now is actively trying to build for our kids to be able to get some more experience in real world application in high school. This relies on community partners. We have a bunch of them. And again, I think this tells our history a little bit, because what's the prominent community partner for our school right now? Colleges. My goal is that we can come back 2 or 3 years from now and you're going to see this filled with local businesses, with experienced trades organizations. This needs to diversify. Right now you kind of see the representation of kind of where the focus has been for Paynesville schools and for high schools in general. So let's talk about the facility. Now, this is my #1 question that I get, and the #1 question when I talk to people is, Matt, I hear what you're saying, but how is it that 15 years ago we were graduating over 100 in a class, and today we're graduating 80? Convince me that we need actually more space. And I get that, and I think that's fundamentally a quality question that needs to be addressed. And here's my response to it. None of this that we are building or asking to move forward is traditional classroom space at either building. We have the market cornered on that. And it would be foolish for Paynesville area schools to go and look at adding classroom space. What we are talking about and what this proposal is really geared around is 21st century learning. How do we take the career and technical education scope of this and really have a CTE program that can get kids the experience and the linkage to real-world application in a high school setting. That's what this is really founded upon. I know that people talk quite a bit about a forecourt gym. And how does this forecourt gym really lend itself to 21st century learning? I talked about new electives at the high school. One of the things that is the most exciting is what our physical education and health department is doing. Because they are actively looking at not only how can we increase offerings, but how can we get to this core question of individual wellness. You know, you can't pick up the newspaper today without reading about mental health issues, it seems like. Every day they seem to be in the paper, doesn't matter if you're looking locally or nationally. But that's not something that high schools have done a very good job of addressing. And so there are opportunities with this space to be able to add that whole child approach to our secondary building. The other component to this then obviously is it's a large commitment with career and tech ed. The space number 8 in the lower left corner, that is actually existing space that houses our 2 wood shops, our metals shop, and our ag space right now. And that would actually be a continuous space. That space would be gutted, and it would be one continuous space. It would have stations or areas for direct instruction, but it would really be space that's dedicated to applied learning. So when we talk about taking an industrial arts class or a welding class, I don't want those kids sitting in a classroom learning about how to weld. I want them in the shop learning how to weld. And so that's really what this is. The classroom becomes the lab, or the classroom becomes the shop. So it would take significant remodeling. Moving up to number 7. Number 7 would be the automotive program. Right now we're using space across the parking lot in that building. We call it the Land Trans building. My understanding it was a private business at some point many years ago. But that would actually be relocated and brought and connected to our existing building. Obviously, having students go across the parking lot and all of that is a potential safety concern. Our hope would be that we could get that connected as part of our high school, and that's a piece of this as well. Number 6 is a group fitness room. That would be connected to the existing fitness center, and it would be open very similar to the fitness center. Those community members that have memberships would be able to use that, and then there would be an increased offerings in actual group exercise classes. Same model right now that is in play. If you are a fitness center member, the group exercise classes are free of charge. They're included with your membership. Same model would carry forward in the future. The other spaces as we move up then, you're talking about a lobby space, not only for the forecourt gym and the community activity center, but that lobby space would also serve dual purposes for our auditorium as well. When we do have a full show, that is one thing that is a need, is a lobby space to have a full intermission and be able to do some things with that. Space 2 would be the wrestling room. Multi-purpose room. It would be dedicated to wrestling during wrestling season. That space is large enough to get 2 full wrestling mats in it. And then space 1 is our community center and the forecourt gym. This is going to be much larger. There's basketball lines in this image, but we're talking about having indoor tennis and pickleball and an assortment of different adult rec leagues that would be able to run as well. Space number 9, there's 2 9s on there because the final mechanical space needs to be worked out once they do the final design process, and so that's why, depending on what that final design is, could move that mechanical room one way or the other. And then space 4 would actually be some concessions capabilities in order to have some larger events and have those there. The other thing that's going on with this, one of the things we experienced this year is we have a uptick in the number of 4-year-olds in our district. So preschool offerings this year for 3-year-olds needed to be scaled back in order to accommodate all the 4-year-olds that were registering. It's a good problem to have, but it also is less than ideal for parents of 3-year-olds. This would allow community education, who's currently housed in the old middle school office. This would allow community education to be officed down in the addition. It would then gain greater community access to the community center. And then it would open up the old middle school office for the district office. So then the current district office space at the elementary school could be dedicated to more early learning programming, would be the plan, with the hope then that we could have a robust 3-year-old program that wouldn't be contingent on space. Yeah?
Are those remodeling costs factored into the overall budget, or is that?
Which remodeling costs?
Moving the district offices over and remodeling that?
No, that would come out of long-term facility maintenance dollars. That would not come out of this project. Okay? So again, just to kind of review what these highlights are, we're talking about connecting the auto shop to the high school. That group fitness center room would be attached to the current fitness center. We would be using the same model for memberships. Group exercise classes would be still contained within that group or that fitness center membership. Community education offices would be relocated to the newer space. There would be space for concessions, wrestling room, the forecourt gymnasium that would have the walking track around the exterior of it. And then obviously you would need the restrooms, mechanical space, all of that. A couple of the other things, we do have an air quality initiative that we would be implementing at the elementary school. That would be a priority in this project, along with replacing our oldest boilers in both buildings. Our elementary school right now is powered or heated by 2 1955 boilers, and our senior or secondary building has a 1968 boiler and then one that was a 2006. The 2006 would stay. The other 3 that are their oldest boilers would be replaced in the project. The renovation, total renovation right now would be over 15,000 square feet of it would be for CTE classrooms and space. There would also be some dollars in our long-term facility money that would remodel and upgrade our softball complex. We would run that project parallel to this one. It would actually come from a different funding source, but it would be happening at the same time. And then the rest of those are things that we would be obligated to do once we start the project. So for instance, the minute we start consuming parking lot with this addition, then we would need to come up with a site water retention plan and new parking lot space. We have to do some ADA upgrades for, I believe it's 4 restrooms that are in direct proximity of the new construction. And then we have to finish the fire sprinklering project at the secondary building. All of these are, with the exception of the softball, the rest of these are all contained within this project. Okay? One of the items that I passed around was an Innovation Center open house. July 31st at 6 p.m. The school district, in partnership with the Community Foundation, is going to be doing an Innovation Center open house. Those of you that know what the old middle school media center space, that space has been remodeled this summer, and it will be Innovation Center is what we're calling it. It's kind of like a fabrication lab. You will have equipment in there like laser engravers, CNC mills, 3D printers. There'll be a screen print equipment. There'll be some robotics equipment in there. There will be a full video and audio studio in there. If any community member wants to come and see where Paynesville is going and what school looks like, we will have in the neighborhood of 20 to 35 students at this event that will be talking about what they have been doing in school with some of these new pieces of equipment. It might be a good thing to come check out. And there's free root beer floats. So, the bare minimum, you get a root beer float out of the deal. So, How did we arrive at this project? It's really it's the three legs to the stool, so to speak. You've got the project, and think of the project itself as that stool seat. That's what you sit on, that's what everyone sees, that's what they think about. But that seat's not possible without all three legs working together. And the three legs were really identifying district needs, identify community priorities, and then identify what that appropriate cost is. Just want to walk through quickly how that happened. You know, since I've been here for about a year, these are the 9 needs that I have been talking about as priorities for the schools. Talk about replacing those boilers, being able to provide a community asset, something that is going to be here and available, yes, for students, but also to add to our community as a whole. It's important to bring gymnastics back on site. This plan allows that. We do need to address some softball field needs, and the plans are in the works to approve that or to be able to provide that. The auditorium space, it's a beautiful space. It's used non-stop. I know what I've learned since I've been here is back in 2000, 2001, when that space was being talked about, one of the big questions is it really going to get used? If we do this, is it going to be used? You know, you're looking at needing to book 6 months in advance right now to be able to get into that space. So it is very well used, and it is an asset, but it's lacking kind of a formal lobby where larger crowds could go stretch their legs in intermission. Wrestling room concerns, and then ample space for activities, and try to address our fitness center needs. You know, those of you that use the fitness center, I'm sure you're familiar, but the fitness center itself is one space. Fitness center also uses the hallway behind the auditorium to the south of the auditorium, and then there's a group exercise room over by the one door. I always tell Matt I'm thankful that group exercise doesn't go on when the fire marshal's here, because I'm pretty sure that would be the end of our group exercise room. So it's kind of outgrown what did the population it serves, and it's time to address it. We also have had UNESCO come in and assist with some equipment assessments, and this is small print. I don't expect anyone to read it. The only thing I just want you to look at is this is our elementary school, and the red bars are the bars that is, those are the actual life use of our current equipment. So for instance, this one right here is a heating coil that feeds our gymnasium. It's almost 80 years old. The expected life expectancy of a piece of equipment like that today is about 30 years. So I think we've gotten our use out of it. I think it's served us well, and it's time to come up with a replacement plan. The secondary school, you can see it's not as many infrastructure needs, and the reason being is because more of the square footage at the secondary school was part of the '93 edition than it was at the elementary when you look at the proportion of those buildings. But again, you can see that we are creeping towards those life expectancies in many of our key infrastructure equipment. So the district actually started this process back, I can see back, there were conversations about this back to 2005. 2017 is when they really had a group get together. There were roughly about 140, 150 community members that came together to talk about the school buildings and kind of where they think things should be moving. And this group came up with this list. And these numbers, my understanding at this meeting, those that were in attendance had 6 colored dots, and they could go and vote, put their colored dots and vote. So that's what those numbers represent. Jim Fieldhouse had 209 dots by it at the end of the night when people voted. So this was work in 2017. It continued into 2018. There were multiple facility committee meetings that continued the conversation. This spring, in April and May of 2019, the district worked with school perceptions to send district residents a survey. We got 624 responses back. which it's a 24% response rate. I know there are some people that were hoping we got 70 or 80% response rate. This was one of the first questions I asked school perceptions is, how many surveys do you need back to really have quality data? Their goal in every district they work with is 18%. Is what their goal is. So we exceeded the 18% benchmark. School perceptions is relatively confident they could actually take the results of that school survey and get us a real good picture of if we had 70 or 80% of our respondents get back to us. Key findings are a couple things of interest. This whole survey is on the school district website if you want to go through the whole thing. 68% of all subgroups were interested or supported the district exploring a bond referendum to update schools. And 84% of the people that responded to that survey were either satisfied or very satisfied with the district. We're going to come back to surveys when we talk about costs. So the total project, after you add in finance charge and the whole 9 yards, would be $16,090,000 is what the total project would include. Average tax impact for the average residential homestead property would be $6.75 per month or $81 annually increase in your current school district property taxes that are collected. For the purpose of that figure, I am using the dollar amount of $168,000 as the average price of a residential home in Paynesville area schools. You can go online and Google that, and you're going to get numbers anywhere between 155 and 177. That's what you'll probably find online. The tax impact is here, and see if I do this, if I lose you. I do lose you, I'm sorry. Couple things to note with tax impact, and I have tax impact statements. If anybody wants one, I can get you one here today. The couple things that are new, agricultural homestead. The 2019 legislative session ended with the ag tax credit for schools going from 40% tax credit to a 50% tax credit for bonds sold in 2020. That's what the classification we would fall into. Depending on how the state budget does, that legislation that they passed actually allows that credit to tick up to a 70% tax credit over the course of 4 years. So for sure, we would be at a 50% tax credit, and depending on the economy and how the state surplus budgets work, we potentially in 4 years could actually be at a 70% tax credit. Otherwise, what we are expressing here is your estimated increase if the project were to move forward. So you would compare your pay 2019 taxes to pay 2020, and this would be what the increase would be if the project were to move forward. Now it's important to know that this is a rather attractive price point, and a lot of that has to do with because of the debt that the district is retiring. We are set to retire about half of our debt on December 31st of this year. The other half will be retired on December 31st of 2024. And so it's actually wrapping this new project around that debt, and that's how we're coming up with these rates. So getting back to school perceptions and kind of how does the district come up with a $16 million project? And this is really where things are at. So if you look at that top group, right up here, there's non-parent, non-residents. That's really the group that is going to drive most of the decision making. Because right now, public schools in general, in most communities, it's either anywhere from 1 in 6 to 1 in 8 homes in a community actually have a direct connection to a public school anymore. That's just how our demographics work. So you can see where that 50% number is. It's in, hitting that $16 million mark, and that is what the board is using to come up with the number. If you go down to all residents, if you drop down there, you see you actually hit that lime green color, which would indicate maybe support for a $19 million project. There's a couple of things that you need to be a little careful on with that. Is all residents, they factor in the parents of children in school, and school perceptions over their history has learned that they tend to somewhat over-support school projects, and so rather than focusing on that group, school perceptions recommendation is you always focus on that non-parent resident who does not have a connection to school, and that's really kind of what your tax appetite of your community would be. Ellers is our municipal financial advisor. They have a pretty slick tax calculator, and it is available on our website right now. If you go to our website, there's a big icon that says click here for more referendum information. When you go there, you can click on the how much will this cost tab, and there's a calculator. You can put your estimated market value in for your residential or commercial property, and it will tell you exactly what the impact would be on your tax statement. If you are an ag landowner, there's an email that Ellers would just prefer you email your information to, and someone from Ellers will actually walk you through, just because the ag side of it is a little more complex than having a single parcel residential property. Next steps. First of all, tonight there is an open house at the auditorium at 6 p.m. Representatives from Ellers and UNESCO will be on hand. If you want to come in, if you have specific questions about finances, Ellers will be able to work with you and answer those. UNESCO would be able to answer any construction questions or design questions. But 6 to 8 p.m. tonight at the auditorium, we will have an open house. It is truly an open house. Every half hour there'll be a presentation that'll be about 10 minutes or so, and then from there you can go and talk to whoever it is you want. If you want to talk to Matt about what community ed may be doing for community offerings in the new space, he has information he can share with you on that. If you want to talk to Ellers about financial questions, they will be available to answer those questions. So that's tonight. There's another one scheduled for August 7th. I believe both of those are in the papers this week, and I think they'll run again next week. But then August 13th is the day. So please remember to vote. The combined polling place is this location. Even if you are out in a township that maybe you do just mail ballots or that you vote at a different location, the combined polling place, the only polling place is this location. If that doesn't work, early voting is going on now. You can stop at the school district office attached to the elementary school between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. and you can vote then as well. So please remember to vote on August 13th, or vote early if you can't make that work. Questions?
Who's counting the votes?
So the election judges are the city election. It's the same group that does the November election. Renee and this couple of city workers are the ones that are doing the election judging. Yep. Early voting, those all have to go down to Stearns County. So when you submit a ballot at the district office, you seal that ballot, and then we have 5 days to hand deliver it to the district office, or to the county office, and then Stearns County is counting the early votes.
Do you have an estimate of how much money you have stuck into doing all the research for this project already?
Yeah, what do you want me to include is where the question becomes. So for instance, we have about $5,000 to $7,000 invested in the election. It's a special election in August. We're running that. We're paying those costs. We have a site inspection that's going to need to be done that is going to be part of this 16 million, but that will be just over $5,000. I think realistically, when it's all said and done, school perceptions, that whole survey ran about $13,000. So I think when it's all said and done, you're going to be in that neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000 is where we're at. Other questions?
So if this passes, will you have a person to oversee the project, how the money is spent, and the person selected?
Yes. Right now, the intent of the district is to work with UNESCO. They would work with us on the construction project itself. They would be the project management of it. Our business manager is ultimately going to be the one in the district, is the one who ultimately needs to end up paying those bills. But we would be partnering with UNESCO and their experience in the K-12 realm of public schools. That's who we would be working with as far as an expert consultant. They would also be taking care of the architecture side of things and the engineering side of the house as well.
So if it ends up being 14 million, will you return that money to the taxpayer?
Well, I really hope that that's what we can come out with. Yeah, I mean, in talking with UNESCO has done a lot of these. They've been involved with this. They believe that $16 million is where things will end up. But once we are to the point where we're opening bids and having all of that, there will be a full turnkey cost that everybody will be able to see exactly where those $16 million are going. If there is excess, that's exactly what needs to end up happening, is those then that have to be refunded.
What is the $16 million figure based on? Is that based on the architect's estimate or is it based on, did somebody look at what the cost of building materials are and evaluate all those costs?
Yep, so again, I'm not a construction expert, but I believe in the industry it's rough order of magnitude. ROM is what they're using, but UNESCO is talking regularly about, for instance, what steel tariffs are doing right now to the price of construction. So they're in the industry and they're currently actively building at other locations. So yeah, they're using what the industry is projecting, but they're also using what their experience is and where they're putting up similar projects in other districts as to how they're coming up with 16 million. Yep.
You mentioned the automotive shop when we moving into that, number 7. What happens to the automotive shop here? And also, will that all be parking lot then? Will the building be torn down?
Thank you for asking that. I meant to talk about that. So the automotive shop most likely will be repurposed and used as building and grounds cold storage. So we would be able to close half that building down. It would be cold storage. The rest of it we would continue to have to heat. Right now we're heating the whole building, so I think we would see some savings there. But our buildings and grounds equipment would move to that. Our pickups, snow plows, snow blowers, those type of things. The armory is the other question. The armory would need to be removed. And because of that whole site water plan and the expansion of the parking lot spaces that we're going to be eliminating, we would need to recapture the current armory for green space for PE classes and for junior high football and those type of things. Yep.
And those costs are included in the 6 million?
Yes, correct.
And your resident facility that you have is for 2 mats. That wouldn't be for tournaments. So.
No, that'd be a practice. Yep. So then wrestling actually is going to have a couple of options, because right now the one limitation, if anyone was up at the Bulldog Invite here this last winter, when we put 3 mats down, it means that we can only put one side of the bleachers out. And realistically, if we have 8 teams here and have 3 mats down, we could have both sides of those bleachers out and we would sell. Both of them would be packed. So when we have larger wrestling events, that community center space will have bleachers in it, and we will be able to host a larger event in that space. And then if we would have, say, a wrestling duel or something like that, we could still use our competition gym if we wanted to.
Is the street issue going to be addressed?
What street issue?
No streets to the ground right now. I know that's a big issue for some of the people that live in that area going.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take that question is, are those gates going to be opened and are those streets going to be opened up? And I really believe the answer to that is no, they probably won't. However, here's what I would like to see happen. I would like to see us be able to work and have a frontage on the west side of our building and have frontage that wraps around to the north, so that we would actually have 4 exits from our lot. So that there would be 3 on the old Highway 23 and 1 on what is that little Main Street. Those are the hope is that that's what we would be able to do. Now, I think by repurposing the armory space, that there's a realistic opportunity for that, because we could reuse the current armory easement that goes on to old Highway 23. If we need to go and request permission to add easements onto old Highway 23, I bet the answer to that is probably no. But the way I look at it right now is we do have 3 easements. I just want to restructure what that frontage would look like so we could get 4 exits out of.
Well, it's a mess now where they're coming out, so.
Sure. Yep.
How many homes are there in the entire district, including the seasonal ones?
That is a really good question. I was just looking at something, and I don't want you to quote me on this number, but I was just looking at something for a mailing about the referendum yesterday, and when I was on the U.S. Postal Service site, I came up with 3,800 and some, like 26 addresses to send referendum information to. Now that includes businesses. That includes that type of stuff. It would include apartment complexes in that too.
I was just curious how many the total was.
Yeah. That's a ballpark. Any other questions?
Well, if the survey was 624, that doesn't seem to be a very broad, coverage for if there's even roughly 3,826, the 624 doesn't seem like a very broad number to cover, that would encompass that area.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a statistician. I don't do polls for a profession. I've taken a couple stats class, and I know that when professional pollers are out doing their work, sometimes their pool to get a valid, reliable data can be as low as 4 and 5%. Our pool was 24%. So again, I'm not a statistician though. I'm not going to say whether that's adequate or not. I would ask somebody who actually is in that realm to weigh in on something like that. Yep.
I think that was kind of why you guys used a professional polling company.
Well, it's a combination. I mean, go home tonight and try and write a survey that you think is reliable and not biased and all of those things, and then show it to 10 other people and see what they think. I mean, to have somebody who that's what they do and that's the realm they live in, you're absolutely right. That's not something I'm qualified to be doing. So that's why we went with somebody else. And there's about 3 of them in the state that work with public schools. And School Perceptions was the one that was the most reasonable.
When you had talked about moving the community ed office down here at
Yep.
the
Yep.
auditorium, so would that make that the main entrance as well that's unlocked during the day? Okay.
Yep, correct.
But I was thinking, yeah, if we expand parking lots, that's a heck of a long ways for kids to
Yep.
walk.
Nope. It would be, and I really think that that plaza would become the main entrance for activities and for school. Yep.
I have a question about the walking track. Is that something that would be open to all community members or just those who have a membership?
No. So right now the secondary school is open to all community members to come and walk. We have, I see the same 8 to 12 community members using it. The walking track would be the same thing.
So then what happens to the walking track when the bleachers are pulled out for an event?
If there's an event, then we would probably need to have public walking in the school or something. But the nice thing about it is there's going to be a place for indoor walking all the time. Our preference would be that be on the walking track as regularly as we can have it there. But you're right, we may have 8 to 12 days a year where we have large events in there and they need to use what they're using now for the indoor
So
walking.
If there's like bio classes in there, they could still be walking in there?
Yep. Yeah, and we're talking about doing some netting so that if community members are walking, they don't have to worry about dodging volleyballs or doing anything like that, that they would have a safe space to be able to walk and activities could still be going on in that gym. Yeah.
Will the seasonal people be able to vote on this referendum?
So it's just like every other election. So your primary residence, that is the residence in which you are a registered voter, that you will vote on this referendum, just like any other election. So in interpreting your question as seasonal, meaning they only live here for, say, 4 months out of the year and they live somewhere else for the other 8 months, they would be voting in whatever district they live in for that 8 months.
Where you pay your homestead tax.
Correct.
If you want to pay your homestead tax where you live 4 months, that's where you vote.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate.
Thank you, Matt, for your presentation.
You bet.
One more. Okay, so you've presented to this group. What would you like to see from us to promote your cause?
Here's what I can tell you at the core of this building project. And I'm here to give you information about it. I really am committed to that. I find it very easy to talk about this project because I believe it is the right project and it is a quality project. It is something that will serve Paynesville schools today and 10 and 15 years into the future. And so I believe in this project. I know that this district has had a previous gym project and some other things and it didn't pass, and I understand all that. And what I say is that means it wasn't the right project. I really firmly believe that this is the right one. The other thing is I can't impress upon people enough, please, at some point, come up to school and see what's going on. School today is not what I experienced in school, thankfully. And things are different. I think the community is going to see a different priority with school, and I think they're going to see a different outcome. Now, that's going to take a little bit of time. So what I want from you is I want your support with this. If you don't support it, that's fine. Let's still talk when we see each other on the street. But I think it's a quality project. I firmly believe that. And it makes it easy to get up and talk about it. It really does. Yeah.
We've been hearing about the boilers and air quality for probably a decade already.
Yep.
And yet, it doesn't come, it doesn't happen. So I think it would happen, but every time that they come to the voters, they ask for, more money for different things that you just can't get behind it. So, is that why the boilers are still turning into antiques and so forth because of that issue, or why do we keep having that going forward?
That's a really good question, and I can only talk about since July, because that's when I started here, a year ago July.
Right.
I believe that what is a priority will get done. I firmly believe that. People have asked me at other presentations too, Matt, are these needs or are these wants? And again, I can go back to, no, these are needs. They really are needs. Ultimately, the only way schools can do a project like this is to have the support and the yes vote from the community. Now, if the community doesn't support it, the needs are still there. And they're not going away. And so I think that's the other piece too. Why is this whole boiler piece? Why have we been talking about this for 10 years? There's probably an element of that. So I hope that we can gain support for this. I hope that we have a good outcome in August. But at the end of the day, regardless of what happens in August, the school district still has needs, and we still need to move forward, and we need to do the best thing tomorrow for kids. That's ultimately what this is going to come down to. So I don't feel like I'm answering your question, but that's kind of where it's at.
Really not, but that's okay. I'll you know, from a different angle.
Okay?
I just want to say, having grandchildren in a different school district than this, a very progressive school district, this community is lacking as far as I can see. And it's the children who are going to suffer. I don't care about the boilers. I'm sorry, I care about the curriculum. And if we don't make some changes here, it's the kids who are going to be left behind. When they go into college or wherever they go, they're already behind. We have a nephew who's a professor at Bethel. They have a special program to catch up country kids to the kids who live in the metro area. So
the problem is a lot of people don't want to put money to support the kids.
I'm sorry, but that's the future of...
Because you don't have kids of your own.
Right.
I know, but you got to support the kids.
I can speak, you know, to, this is probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 presentations that I've done. And I can tell you the overarching feeling that I've received from them is I think people appreciate understanding where Paynesville Schools is trying to go. I think people also genuinely believe that the path makes sense. And I've not necessarily run into a lot of people who are just adamantly opposed that say, you know what, Matt, what you're asking for is unrealistic. I've not heard that message back. Now, maybe they let me leave the room and then that's the conversation they have. I don't know. But that's not what I've been hearing. Yeah.
Well, I think in an ag economy, you know, it's a tough thing to wrap your arms around because there just isn't. Commodity prices have been down for a number of years. Milk prices have been almost non-existent. So ag people bear the brunt of it because every acre that you own is taxed or is levied a certain amount against. And so you want to be able to pay for those things, not just get charged for it. They have to be paid for. And I think that it's hard to wrap yourself around that part of it.
Yeah, Bert.
My understanding, this project to go forward, we're still below every district around us as far as the tax levy. Am I correct? Close to correct.
We're going to be, I mean, BBE is less than us. They have a project on the ballot in November. So depending on the outcome of that.
Albany, Sauk Center, New London, Eden Valley all had projects, so they're already way above us anyway. So
ACGC just actually passed a project in November for $15 million. So next year, when they have that in their tax rolls, they're going to actually leapfrog us. So yeah, there are a couple districts that are lower than us. There are probably a handful that are higher than us. If we approve this project and add on the tax impact of this project, we don't leapfrog those that are already higher than us. We maintain our position. We still have a couple lower than us. We have, again, 4 or 5 that are greater than us. Yes.
Right now, you're scheduled to just use this room. Is this going to be enough space to get everybody through?
You tell me. Yeah, I mean, are you talking on election day?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the only election that I have to compare it to is November of '09. There was an election in an odd year that, in my opinion, is a comparable to this one, and there were 1,300 voters in that election. So.
Okay.
Well, but that's an open thing. It's from noon to 8. I mean, it's.
And it only takes...
Yeah, it literally takes you 4 seconds to vote.
Right.
So it's, I mean, what's that? I think they have 4.
Oh, if they're only using 4 voting booths, then it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe they have 4.
It goes really quick.
Yes, it does.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. What parts of the project have been eliminated? I think originally it
Hey,
was...
thank you for asking that. Why didn't I bring that up? Yeah. Thank you. So originally we were talking about a couple of things. We were talking about precast construction. There is precast concrete construction for some of this, but a big chunk of this is going to be a pre-engineered steel building with some dressed up paneling on the the outside of it, as well as some modifications made to the inside to be able to withstand what would go on in that space. There was a fabrication lab that was a part of this. That fabrication lab was eliminated because of what we're remodeling this summer. What is where that open house is going to be. There was also a 5,000 square foot new fitness center. The fabrication lab was going to go in the current fitness center space, and so we were going to actually upgrade the current fitness center so the hallway and our current makeshift group exercise space could all just fit into one 5,000 square foot space. That has been eliminated as well. And that directly has been a lot of feedback that Matt has received from members about kind of what their thoughts were and stuff. So those are the two big portions of it, is the 5,000 square foot fitness center, about a 2,600 square foot fabrication lab. Those both have been eliminated. The other thing is we are also going to take and use the existing wrestling room in the basement and turn that into a team strength and conditioning space. And that's one of the pieces of feedback that we're starting to hear from fitness center members too, is we have an increase in the number of students that are using the fitness center. Well, when our student population increases, our community members that use it decrease. And so if we can provide an alternative space where teenagers want to listen to loud music and as they work out, they can do that in the old wrestling room, and then the fitness center would be more geared towards that community member that may be looking to use that space as well. Okay? Any other questions?
Question, I just have a comment.
Yep.
You know, people move into communities, people that have families who move into communities that have things that offer their children. Can probably work in a community, but they want to live in a community where their children are going to have the most benefit. And if we want this community to grow, we're going to have to offer the kids what the parents want the children to have. They'll probably go live Wilburn or London, wherever, where they can get better education, but they'll come to Paynesville to work. That doesn't help the tax
Right.
law. So, yeah,
You know, I had an interesting conversation, and Alicia, you may know more about this, but the city is working with somebody about the downtown redevelopment, and so I had a conversation with this person, and one of the questions that she asked me was, so Matt, what are your opinions, or what would you like to see in downtown Paynesville? And I told her, I said, well, I have a complete bias. You're talking to somebody who is directly connected to Paynesville area schools. And the one thing that I look in our community, and the one thing that I see is lacking, is we don't have things for kids to do. We don't have an extensive community park system in town that is accessible for kids. And so I really hope that a piece of the conversation about any downtown redevelopment is, how does this impact young people? Because we need healthy places for young people to go. And I'm convinced if we have healthy places for young people to go, their young parents will follow and they will come with. And so that's what I spoke about with her. And I am 100% on board with having the school district be that place for young people. I have no problem with that. If that's the model that this community wants, sign me up. I will carry that torch. But I think that's an important thing to remember. I hear a lot of people talk about the assets of Paynesville area, and you talk about the lake and the park system and the trails, and I agree with all that. I love using all those things. But I try to put myself into the shoes of a 12-year-old, and I don't know if I have access to that unless my parents are willing to give me access. And so that's what I'm hoping to, is something that people can think about a little bit. Paynesville area schools will absolutely be that place for young people. And if that's the model this community wants, I'm 100% on board. And let's get creative about how we can do it.